This is just a short one, and I'm going to leave the video play in the background, but I have it on mute because I'm not going to watch the feel like if I watch some of it, I should watch the whole thing, right? I just want to pick out a couple of things that Peadar Tóibín is after saying here. And on the whole, in, I suppose, regular times, you can understand, I suppose, the sophistication of argument or line of thinking that he attempts to bring you in, right? He attempts to bring you into his perspective, and he does it very well, right? My issue is not so much with that; it's with not just the phraseology, but I suppose what the terms reference in terms of what the man's understanding of a nation is, and what his understanding of the Irish people's future is, right? And also in terms of what he values and what he doesn't, right? And he says that Aontú are interested in a pluralistic republic, right? So, meaning a republic that caters to many different worldviews, many different peoples, all that sort of stuff, right? So he's devoid of using, or maybe of believing in, the idea of a nation, right? Or it's certainly not the top of his priorities in terms of how he views things, right? And he also says that he's speaking to people of color, right, at bus stops, or who are saying that when they're at bus stops, they have Irish people, I presume, telling them that to go back to their own country, to go home, and maybe that they don't want them here, right? And he says that he will never get in line with that sort of thinking. He will never support that sort of sentiment, right? Maybe not just the language, because you could be against the language a person uses, but you could be for the motivating factor that led to that language being spoken, what it means to that person, right? So why a person would say something like that. You might be a little bit more supportive of that than you are with the language they use. But I think the language they use it's meaningful and it's meaningless in probably equal measure, right? And Aontú Peadar Tóibín here is saying that he will never get on board with that. His party will never be for that. It will never support that sentiment or the language, right? Where people would feel unwanted or that they're not welcome here. I would say to Peadar Tóibín, or to anyone listening to this, that he's automatically making himself defunct, because it seems to be a growing sentiment. If not, it was just a latent sentiment in Irish people. It just needed the right circumstances to elicit it, right? That most people do feel like that. They do feel like they don't want people who aren't like them, right? And it's okay to say that. There's a massive amount of Irish people that just want Ireland to be the way it was when they grew up, when it's predominantly Irish people. It was a nice time, right? We had our weaknesses, we had our flaws, we had our minds totally butchered and our spirits quenched nearly by the overburdening singular worldview of Catholicism, right? Which had its merits too. But we had nice times in Ireland when it was mainly just Irish people here. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. There's nothing wrong with believing that. And more importantly, there's nothing wrong with wanting that again. It won't be the exact same, because we've grown as a nation, as people, right? We've come out the other side of things and got plunged into other nonsense, right? But we seem to be on the way of kind of sharpening our faculties again and regaining a bit of self-esteem and a bit of courage in asserting how we view things and being okay with saying that. And one of those things is, it's okay for me to want to live in my country with just my people. There's nothing wrong with saying that. So for Peadar Tóibín to say that his party would never align with thinking like that, he's telling you right now that he does not represent you, right? So he's saying, like, essentially, if it is the will of the people, that the majority of the Irish people said, we just want to be in Ireland with Irish people. We don't mind a few people coming in here, we don't mind that. We can accommodate that. We can absorb that, as we've done over the centuries. It's not a purity thing, right? We should be allowed to decide what is enough for us to be able to absorb and retain a sense of self-identity as a nation. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's logically sound. It's consistent. right? Philosophically, there is nothing incoherent in saying that, right? Biologically, there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying that. Instinctually, there's nothing wrong with saying that, right? Socially, there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying that. Historically, across all fields of human endeavor, that sentiment is totally consistent. There's nothing abhorrent about it. It's just as consistent as Peadar Tóibín claims his view is consistent, right? In terms of people wanting to hold it and cherish it, right? I would argue it's more consistent than Peadar Tóibín's because it stands the test of time across history. His doesn't. It's a big experiment that we're all suffering from at the moment, right? So that's my thoughts on that. Peadar Tóibín is telling you now, you can vote for him if you want. I would never tell you who to vote for because that's your business, right? I'm just telling you what I'm taking from this man. And it's in his own words as well, so it's not me like speculating. I'm just pulling out what's implicit in what he's saying and showing you the other side, right? Whenever you say something, there's also something kind of being smuggled in with what you're saying that can be drawn out of it. And what can be drawn out of Peadar Tóibín's remarks here is that if the majority of the Irish people decided that they want an Ireland of yesteryear, where it was mainly Irish people, right? And we want to see what we can do with ourselves when we're by ourselves, right? Because we were in a great process of growth there for a small period, right? And we should be allowed and not condemned for having the view that we would like to see where we could take ourselves as a nation, right? Without endless interference by parasites and the people that these parasites in the Dáil are bringing over, right? There's nothing wrong with saying that. That's okay. It's okay to say that. And Peadar Tóibín is saying that he will never represent you. He will never support that worldview. So he can never be there to represent you if you're of that worldview. Your grandparents' worldview, right?